Imagine standing on a hilltop in southern Turkey. The wind cuts across bare limestone ridges. Below you, the sun-baked plains of the Fertile Crescent stretch to the horizon. And beneath your feet, buried deliberately, intentionally by human hands, lies the oldest complex of monumental architecture ever discovered on Earth. Not a village. Not a simple shelter. A site of massive carved stone pillars, arranged in perfect circles, built by people who had no pottery, no writing, no metal tools, and no agriculture. They were hunter-gatherers. And 12,000 years ago, they moved mountains. The story of Göbekli Tepe begins not with a grand expedition, but with a moment of confusion. In 1963, a joint survey by Istanbul University and the University of Chicago noted a limestone hilltop near the town of Şanlıurfa in southeastern Turkey. The surveyors recorded it as an unremarkable site, scattered flint fragments, a few broken stones. They moved on. Decades passed. Then in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt arrived. He knelt down, picked up a flint tool, and immediately understood that something extraordinary lay beneath the surface. Schmidt would dedicate the rest of his life to this hill. And what he uncovered would permanently rewrite the story of human civilization. It is 9600 BCE. The last ice age has just ended. Glaciers are retreating northward, and the world is warming. Across the Near East, small bands of humans, perhaps 30 to 50 people each, move through landscapes rich with wild gazelle, aurochs, and stands of wild wheat. They hunt with flint-tipped arrows, they grind seeds on flat stones, they have no permanent settlements. At least, that is what the textbooks once told us. But here, on this limestone ridge that the locals call Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill in Turkish, something is happening that defies every assumption we have made about our ancestors. Hundreds of people are gathering. And they are building. The scale of what they built is staggering. Excavations, still covering only roughly 5% of the total site, have already revealed at least 20 circular enclosures. Each enclosure contains between 8 and 12 T-shaped limestone pillars, arranged in precise oval or circular patterns. At the center of each circle stand two taller pillars, facing each other like sentinels. The largest pillars stand up to 5.5 meters tall, and weigh between 10 and 20 tons each. They were quarried from the bedrock roughly 100 meters away, shaped with flint and stone tools, and somehow transported and raised upright without the wheel, without metal, and without draft animals. The effort required was, by any measure, monumental. This is the first human-built holy place. First came the temple, then the city. But these are not bare stones. That is what makes Göbekli Tepe unlike anything else in the ancient world. The pillars are alive with imagery. Carved in high relief across their surfaces, foxes leaping, scorpions threatening, vultures descending, cranes in flight, serpents coiling, wild boar charging. The animal carvings are executed with extraordinary skill and naturalism for this period. Some pillars bear three-dimensional sculptures of animals perched on their edges. On the central pillars of enclosure D, carved arms hang from the sides, unmistakably human forms. These are not just stones, they are beings. Anthropomorphic figures, perhaps ancestral spirits or deities, presiding over the enclosure. Archaeologists have identified a remarkable pattern in which animals are carved and how they cluster. Many species depicted: vultures, headless human figures, scorpions, have strong associations with death and the underworld in later Near Eastern cultures. Some researchers, including German archaeologist Joris Peters, have analyzed the vast quantities of animal bones found at the site. The bones, representing hundreds of thousands of individual animals, are almost exclusively from wild species: gazelle, aurochs, red deer, and wild boar. There is no evidence of domesticated livestock. This confirms that the builders were not farmers. They were skilled hunters, capable of organizing large-scale communal hunts to feed the workforce building this extraordinary complex. This is the question that haunts every archaeologist who walks this site. Who were these people? And how did they organize the labor required? Consider the mathematics. Moving a single 10-ton limestone pillar from the quarry using only human muscle, ropes woven from plant fiber, and timber rollers would require perhaps 500 people working in coordination. Feeding those 500 people, along with the specialist craftsmen, the carvers, the organizers, would demand an enormous and reliable food surplus. Yet these were hunter-gatherers. People who, according to the old model of prehistory, should have been small, mobile, and incapable of the social organization this project demands. Göbekli Tepe forces us to ask, how complex were so-called primitive people, really? Genetic evidence is beginning to provide answers. Studies of ancient DNA from Neolithic Anatolian populations, published by research teams including those led by Johannes Krause at the Max Planck Institute, suggest that the people of this region were part of a distinct ancestral population that would eventually give rise to early European farmers. Isotope analysis of human remains from nearby contemporary sites shows diets rich in wild game and gathered plants, confirming the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Crucially, recent research published in 2021 in the journal Science Advances, led by archaeologist Ilham Özdogan, found evidence that the builders may have come from multiple different groups, converging on this hilltop seasonally. Perhaps for ritual events, perhaps for feasting, perhaps for reasons we are only beginning to comprehend. Walk with me into enclosure C. The ground beneath your feet is polished limestone bedrock, ground smooth by the hands and feet of countless people. The air smells of wood smoke and something animal, the fat from a roasting gazelle perhaps, or the tang of blood from a fresh kill. The two central pillars rise before you, 5 meters tall, casting long shadows in the late afternoon light. You feel their presence as much as you see them. They face each other across 4 meters of open space. Around the walls 10 smaller pillars watch from semicircular stone benches. Every surface is carved. Every animal placed deliberately. This is not random decoration. This is a designed symbolic world, and you are standing inside it. The architectural phasing of the site tells a fascinating and somewhat melancholy story. Layer 3, the oldest and deepest layer, dating to approximately 9600 to 8800 BCE, contains the largest and most elaborately carved enclosures. The craftsmanship is extraordinary, but then, in Layer 2, dating from around 8800 to 8000 BCE, the enclosures become smaller. The pillars are shorter, the carvings less complex. Something is changing, the ambition is fading. And then, in perhaps the most puzzling act in all of prehistoric archaeology, the entire site is deliberately and carefully buried. Every pillar, every enclosure, filled in with rubble, flint tools, and animal bones, sealed, hidden, preserved for 12,000 years until Klaus Schmidt arrived. The site is not the result of a gradual evolution. Someone decided to build it. Someone knew what they wanted. Here is what Göbekli Tepe does to history. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built around 2560 BCE. Stonehenge reached its final form around 2500 BCE. The first cities of Mesopotamia, Uruk, Eridu, emerged around 4000 BCE. Agriculture began in the Fertile Crescent around 10,000 BCE. Göbekli Tepe was built at 9600 BCE. It predates all of these. And it predates agriculture. For generations, scholars assumed a logical sequence. First farming, then surplus food, then settled communities, then monumental architecture, then religion and ritual. Göbekli Tepe detonates that sequence. Here, monumental ritual architecture appears before farming, before cities, before writing, before almost everything we associate with civilization. Place Göbekli Tepe alongside the other wonders of the ancient world, and the scale of its antiquity becomes breathtaking. While Stonehenge and the pyramids rightly inspire awe, they are separated from Göbekli Tepe by a gulf of time almost incomprehensible to the human mind. More than 7,000 years of history lie between them. But could Göbekli Tepe itself have driven the development of agriculture? This is the radical hypothesis proposed by Klaus Schmidt himself, and it has gained significant traction among archaeologists. The argument works like this. To feed the hundreds of workers gathering seasonally at this ritual site, people would have needed to produce food reliably and in large quantities. That pressure to feed ritual gatherings may have incentivized early experimentation with the cultivation of wild wheat and the management of wild animals. Remarkably, genetic studies published in 2018 identified the Karakudag Mountains, visible from Göbekli Tepe, as one of the most probable origins of domesticated einkorn wheat. Religion, it seems, may not have followed civilization. It may have created it. Despite 30 years of excavation, archaeologists estimate that only around 5% of Göbekli Tepe has been uncovered. Ground-penetrating radar surveys, conducted by teams from the German Archaeological Institute using magnetometry equipment, have detected at least 16 additional enclosures still buried beneath the hill. The instruments have also revealed something extraordinary, what appears to be a large central building at the heart of the complex, larger than any yet excavated. We have, in truth, barely scratched the surface of this site. Each season of excavation brings new discoveries, new questions. A carved image of a woman. Possible astronomical alignments. A sculpture of a predatory bird clutching a human head. Göbekli Tepe is not finished speaking. One discovery has particularly captivated researchers. In 2017, archaeologist Martin Sweatman of the University of Edinburgh proposed, in a paper published in the journal Mediterranean Archaeology and Archaeometry, that certain pillar carvings at Göbekli Tepe encode a major astronomical event, a comet impact or airburst around 10,950 BCE, corresponding to the onset of the Younger Dryas, a sudden climatic cooling that dramatically altered life across the northern hemisphere. The vulture stone, as it is known, appears to show the night sky on a specific date. Other archaeologists remain cautious, noting that the archaeoastronomical interpretation requires assumptions about which animals correspond to which constellations. The debate continues, and it is one of the most fascinating in all of contemporary archaeology. Excavation has yielded another clue about the purpose of this place. Scattered throughout the fill deposits, not informal graves, but broken and intermixed with animal bones and stone tools, researchers have found fragments of human bone. Skulls, in particular. In 2017, a study led by Julia Greski of the German Archaeological Institute documented 3 skull fragments bearing deliberate carved incisions, linear cuts made after death. These are the earliest known examples of skull modification in human prehistory. Combined with the dominance of death-related imagery on the pillars, vultures, headless figures, the site may have functioned as a place of excarnation, where the dead were exposed to the elements, stripped by birds, and transformed into ancestors through ritual. In the end, perhaps the most powerful thing about Göbekli Tepe is not what it tells us about those ancient people, but what it reveals about ourselves. For generations we drew a clear line between primitive hunter-gatherers and civilized farmers and city builders. Göbekli Tepe erases that line utterly. The people who built this place, who carved those foxes and vultures with such precision, who heaved those 10-ton pillars into position, who gathered in their hundreds for reasons we still do not fully understand, were not less than us. They were not stumbling through darkness waiting for agriculture to enlighten them. They had complex symbolic thought, long-range social networks, shared spiritual beliefs, and an impulse to build something that would outlast them by millennia. They were fully, profoundly, astonishingly human. Göbekli Tepe changes everything. It pushes back the threshold of complexity much, much further than anyone believed possible. Today, Göbekli Tepe is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, inscribed in 2018. A protective roof now shelters parts of the excavation. Turkish and international teams continue to work here every summer, each trowel revealing new faces from the deep past. Klaus Schmidt, who gave his life to this hill, died in 2014, just before the world fully grasped the scale of what he had found. His work continues. The hill still holds its secrets. Somewhere beneath that sun-baked limestone, in darkness undisturbed for 12,000 years, more pillars wait. More animals carved by human hands that understood something profound about life and death and the sacred. We are only just beginning to listen.